Easy everyone. So I had some positive feedback on my video that I did on making minimal drum and bass with stock plugins in Ableton, and a few people were asking me to do one for jungle. So yeah, this is what I'm doing now. I've decided to make it a series rather than just making one long video because it's a bit more easy to digest information that way. So, in the first video, we're going to be making one of my favorite things to make, which is a pad. So, in particular, we're going to be making a textured jungle pad. So, I'm going to be showing you some sound design techniques with some of the Ableton stock synths, and yeah, some tips for getting a nice sort of like thick, interesting textured pad without using any samples. So first thing I'm going to do is go into my instruments and open up an instrument rack. This is just going to make it easier to layer instruments, different instruments on top of each other. So I can just use one space here, and I can sort of like just play on the keyboard and they all play together. So I'm going to be using a wavetable first. So yeah, I really like wavetable synths, and the wavetable synth in Ableton's pretty good. So if you don't know what a wavetable synth is, you basically have wavetables, which are like short, like 2-3 second audio clips, and you can go scroll through these audio clips. So this is one where it's just got sort of your basic shapes, so sine, triangle, saw, and square, and then it sort of morphs between them as you move the slider. So if we listen, it's got a sine wave. Yeah, so there's loads of different wave tables. So this is cool, and you can see you've got a 3D image of the sound of like the wavetable, which is pretty cool. And yeah, there's a few different ones to choose from. You've also got a sub oscillator here, which is quite handy for when you're making basses and stuff, but we're not going to use it at the moment because we're making a pad. So you've got these two oscillators, a volume slider here. This is your wavetable position. It'll be called position, I think, in this. Got some different warping modes, so a few different types that you can do. So we'll go through those. 2 filters, which is quite handy. So you can go through and pick all your different types, band pass or high pass or low pass. Also different, filter. So yeah, sorry, different filter shapes, and these would be the different filter types. So you'll just get different sort of saturation and sound from them, and you can sort of drive these other filters, which is quite cool. Again, probably a bit more handy for when you're making basses and stuff. Then you've got your modulation sources. So we've got some envelopes and some LFOs, and we've got a matrix here where we can assign these envelopes and LFOs to different parameters in the synth. We've got a MIDI and an MPE section as well, which I'm not going to mess with at the moment. And we can see down here we've got like a general volume slider. We've got a poly here, which takes it. We can make it mono. These are like the polyphony, so that means that we can play 8 notes together, which we probably not going to, but I usually just keep that where it is. We've got a glide here, so that's when we turn it to mono, we can add glide, so glide between the notes. Unison as well, which is good. So that's a basic run through of wavetable, because we're going to be using this a bit. So yeah. So a good point to start with jungle pads, I find, is always saws. It's got just a nice full body, lot of tone, lot of frequency content. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is just talk a little bit about the music theory of pads. So jungle pads specifically. So pads a lot of the time were coming from things that had been sampled and put in a sampler. So imagine you've got a pad that's got a specific chord in, and then you put it in a sampler, and then you're pitching it up and down. The chord itself, like the notes, the relationship between the notes isn't changing. It's just being transposed up and down. So in music theory, they call that parallel chords, I think, where it's just the same chord just being transposed up and down. And a lot of the synthesizers that were new around the sort of late 80s, early 90s had chord memory modes where you could just play a chord in on your keyboard and then just track that to one note. So you'd play a C note, for example, and then it would play you as a C minor 7, for example, and then you can just pitch that up and down. So you'll notice that a lot of pads in a lot of the jungle tracks are sort of made that way by parallel chords just transposing up and down. So to make things a bit easier, and because a lot of music production is trying to find a quicker way to do something, we can use this chord MIDI device to put in a chord. Now, there's actually quite a few chords already on there. I'm going to use major 7th because the major 7 is always a good one to use. So it's just, yeah, so we've got, it'll be playing a root, and then it's also got up 4 semitones, so that'll be your major 3rd, and then up 11, that'll be your major 7th. So it's missing out the 5th. So if I just play a note now I'm just using my actual computer keyboard. So yeah, we've already got that nice sound. So let's start building it a bit in Wavetable. So I'm going to go to the amp envelope. So this is affecting our volume, and I'm going to give it a bit of attack here so it fades in. And I'm going to give it a bit more release as well, so it fades out a bit nicer. Cool. So I'm going to, using this low pass filter, I'm going to take out some of those highs because it's a bit bright at the moment. I'm going to give it a bit of a steeper slope as well. So I'm going to give it a 24 dB slope instead of 12. And I'm going to just pick a different one of these filter types. So that sounds quite nice. I'm just going to give it a high pass as well. More just a sort of housekeeping, just to take any sort of low-end rumble out. I don't want to make it too high. I don't want to cut out too much of the low end because I don't want it to sound too thin. So that sounds cool. But I kind of want a bit of movement from the pad, from the filter. So yeah, a lot of what we're going to be doing now is just trying to get movement out of sounds. So I've got another envelope here, envelope 2. So if I go into my matrix, now this bit looks a bit confusing, but it's actually quite simple. We've just got all the targets here down the left side here, and across the top we've got the sources. So I want to put envelope 2 on the frequency of filter 1. So I'm just going to click on that just so it shows up at the bottom here. And then, yeah, I can just click and drag in. So making it positive is going to affect it. So now we can see here, if I'll just make it up a bit more. Go back onto the mod sources. So it's now following the shape of envelope 2. So yeah, I'm going to give it some more attack. And I'm going to increase the sustain a bit because I don't like how it's going up and then coming back down. I'm going to increase the sustain so it and I'm going to give it more decay. It's returning down to sort of that sustain value a bit too quickly. So maybe a bit more release as well. Nice. So yeah, let's have a think about some other stuff that we can add. First of all, I'm just going to add some unison because that's going to make it sound really nice. There's quite a few different unison modes. I really like shimmer for pads. I'm going to take the amount down just a little bit. It's just sounding a little bit too detuned. Nice. We've got like a really nice stereo effect going on now. Let's add another oscillator in. And let's use something, let's use a different wavetable. Let's not even use the basics. Let's try instrument. These are always quite cool. So let's try nylon guitar. Nice. I might just bring this down a little bit so we can hear the difference. Yeah, that sounds quite cool. There's a little bit of resonance in the high end. Let's try piano instead. Nice. Yeah, maybe it's just letting a little bit too much of that high end in. I might take this value down. Bring this back up. Cool. So the next thing to do to sort of like be playing around with the sound a bit would be to do some of this warping. So FM, this is, yeah, just doing FM so we can change it that amount. I mean, the tune is good for getting some of those really discordant sounds, but I want a nice melodic pad, so I'm going to leave that where it is. Yeah, we've got the classic, so that's pulse width, where it'll just be stretching it along either side. Sync. Where it sort of like doubles up the wave. And then we've got this warp mode, which is kind of similar to pulse width. It's just it's a little bit different. And folds, again, pretty similar to sync. It's just sort of like mirroring it from the center. So let's do some more interesting stuff on oscillator 2, because I really like just having that sawtooth, just really nice bass for pad. Cool. Let's use envelope 3, sorry, on this pulse width value as well. So I want this to be quite slow. So just going to click on the pulse width, drag it up to affect it. Cool. Now let's get some of these LFOs involved so we can get a bit more movement. Yeah, so also that's quite cool with these envelopes is you can change these values, so you can change the different slopes on there, so we can give it a bit more of a slower decay. And you can change these values as well, so if you want it to sort of go the opposite way, you can do that. Pretty handy. So this LFO, let's do a slight amount of warping modulation with this LFO. So see how that sounds. A small amount. The LFO is moving a little bit too quick, so we can slow that down with the rate. This amount as well I can use to just make it a bit more subtle. I mean, you can use this, obviously this value here controls how much it's being affected by it. But it's nice to just have another control on the actual LFO, so you can just bring it down a little bit if needs be. Cool, let's get this second LFO. Let's do a really slow modulation on this filter. So, really small amount. Maybe a little bit faster. And I'm going to take the amount down again because it's just moving really slightly. With a lot of these pads, it's just about these really subtle movements. So that'll do for a first layer. So next, I'm going to get a wavetable, another wavetable, and we're going to make a sort of weird textured, weird sort of noise texture underneath. So I'm going to change this to noise. We've got loads of different noises here. So just mute this. Right, so actually what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to just put this chord there because I don't want this to be playing a chord. I just want some weird noise underneath. So we've got pink noise here. Let's pick. Cool. So I want a sort of random sort of sound coming from it. So I can go into my audio effects and use an LFO. And I can set it to random. Now it's just picking random values. So I'm going to bring this volume down. I'm going to map this random amount to this. So now it's just going to be playing random volumes. I might map it to this as well. Cool. So I'm going to bring the percentage down a little bit on this gain because I don't want it playing super. I just want it playing quite quietly. Cool. Next, I'm going to use a spectral resonator. Which, yeah, is sort of an effects tool that can be really good for making weird effects with. I'm going to use this granular section. It's quite quiet, but you can hear we've got like a really cool sort of like sparkling effect. So I might just put a utility on just to make it a bit louder. Cool. And I'm going to add some reverb and delay. I'll put a low cut on. Quite a long decay. And let's put a delay on. Well, let's put an echo on. Bit of filter high pass. Back a bit. Boost this up. Cool. now if I play them both together. We've got a nice cool sparkly effect underneath. I'm just going to add some reverb and delay to this original pad as well, because I feel like it's sounding a little bit dry at the moment. Again, we'll increase the decay a bit. Maybe a bit more. Give it a low cut. I'm going to add a chorus as well, because I absolutely love chorus. So we'll put this before the reverb. Maybe ensemble mode. Cool, that's sounding nice. So I'm just going to go for one more layer underneath now. I want just something that's a bit of a different tone and probably a different octave, just so it's layering the sound a bit more. So I'm just going to use an analog for this. So again, analog's really cool. I mean, I just ignore all this routing for now. You've got these two oscillators. So I'm going to pick some square waves instead of saws because they've got a different sort of tone than saw waves. So I'll just mute these two now so we can just hear this. So again, I'm going to give it a bit of unison. I'm going to, pitch one of these up an octave. So we've got our envelope filter here. We've got an envelope for the filter, so I'm just gonna give it a similar sort of envelope shape. I'm gonna increase the sustain a little bit and give it more release. Let's bring. Take this release down a bit. Make it linear as well. So yeah, this is our amp envelope. So again, I'm gonna just give this a bit of a tack. Give it a bit of resonance as well, just to change the tone of the filter a bit. And let's put another chord in. We can add a bit of vibrato as well. Let's give it 4 voices instead of 2 for the unison as well. Let's try a band pass. There we go. That's nice. It's giving us a bit of more sort of like high end. Focusing. There we go. So play them all together. And let's just give this higher layer a bit of reverb as well. And yes, we've got a nice sound here. We can customize it as well by just changing, you know, through all these different wavetables. We can change the chords as well. So yeah, this ended up being a little bit of a longer video than I was expecting. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I'm sort of going through all the sort of features with these synthesizers, because a lot of people say that they don't use them because they're not the cleanest sort of layout. But once you sort of go through all the things and what they do, it's actually not too difficult to use. So yeah, big ups if you made it through this video. And so I'll probably do the next video on bass, so using these synthesizers to make some jungle bass lines. So yeah, big ups everyone, and if you want more content like this, feel free to check out my Patreon. The link will be in the description bar below. So yeah, big ups everyone.